All right, what's up, dude? Rohit Parchuri, Mr. CISO of Yext, let's go.
Yeah.
Finally, we made this thing happen, dude. It's
That's
been too
right.
long.
We've been thinking about this for a long time, so
I know, right?
time came.
And finally, we're here in amazing little Morgan Hill, the city that a lot of people don't know exists in the Bay Area, but it's actually one of the cutest towns over here.
That's so true. Yeah, it's kind of this Bay Area expanding, and now Morgan Hill is kind of like this part of Bay Area. It's not the outskirts anymore.
But your company is not based here, huh?
Absolutely not.
Far from here.
A little far away. Yeah.
Oh, man.
In New York, to be more specific.
By the way, it's a massive building. It's a massive building over there.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Everyone's over there, right?
Pretty much everyone's over there. Yeah. Pretty much like the entire engineering presence is split between New York and DC.
Really?
Yeah. We're a global company, right? So we do have offices all around the globe, but majority of the tech and engineering does happen in New York and DC.
Nice.
So
nice.
I try to make it up maybe a couple times a year. That's about it.
I mean, I've always been interested in that because it's like, that's how people learn, right? You're sitting next to other people, you're having fun, you're talking to them.
Right.
That whole shebang helps so much, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, the pandemic has kind of put the brakes on that, but I think we kind of went from one extreme to a different extreme.
Right.
Now, I think we're trying to kind of figure this sweet spot about, where and how much, you could actually make it at the same time, keep up the quality of life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I love that. I think the energy that you get from other people, just the physical presence itself is a big thing.
By the way, everyone is looking at us right now. Everyone is looking at the light setup.
Exactly,
You're like,
right?
what is going on in here?
See, that's dope right there for you. If you make if you make it something, like make it a bang, right?
I know,
That's exactly
always.
what's happening here.
Always. Dude, that is actually like the core tenet of what somebody once told me. I was like, dude, if I'm gonna build something, if we're gonna build a company, it's gotta be like insane.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about an RSA booth, and the RSA booths, they're so boring. I mean, seriously, man, sometimes you go to these RSA booths and they're like just there. And we're thinking, what if we made it into like this, basically like a clothing store? So you can get your jacket that you got on there
Not bad.
and everything. People come by, they see all these pictures of like, people wearing their stuff in the wild and everything, because it's all about lifestyle, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like this jacket right here.
Yeah.
Can get this jacket. I'd be in. Yeah.
You like this jacket?
Of course I do. It's amazing. I think it goes with the lighting too.
Well, everything comes from like this similar space, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The whole idea is that like,
Absolutely does.
whether you're wearing the jacket or the t-shirt, and the hoodie, which you have a hoodie now, it's just, it should feel natural, right?
Absolutely, dude. See, I think the design of these, any innovation for that matter, how does it begin with an idea? And
Yeah.
how strong an idea is, and how much design that actually goes into the idea, and what kind of ambience you're creating around it, it matters. At the end of the day, if you're doing something, like, do it absolutely amazing, and at the same time,
You gotta, there's only one way to do it 100%, right?
absolutely,
It's like
go all the way.
old Yoda saying, do or do not, there is no try.
There you go.
But speaking of that, like, tell her, like, what do you do at Yext? Like, what do you actually do?
So I'm a CISO, so that's my formal title.
In the current climate, it is the most coveted title of all time.
Infamous title, I would say.
Infamous title.
But I kind of enable the business to reach its purpose while doing security. So that's a single statement of what I do. It comes with a lot of different things, of course, all the way from product to enterprise to certifications, regulatory obligations, privacy, everything that CISO does, of course. It's kind of this, CISOs, I think the role itself evolved over the years.
Yeah.
Now I think we're being asked to do different things, variety of things, and also without a lot of context built in. Where you're a technical practitioner or security practitioner, to be specific. On the other side, you're also a risk manager.
Right.
And then you're a business executive, because how do you present to the business folks? How do you present to the board? How do you present to the executive team without having that, kind of exposure? So I think it's like amalgamation of all these three roles kind of put into one.
Right.
And it's very interesting, right? The lateral latitude that you have across the business is really amazing.
But do you like work with I'm sure you have like a peer, or do you actually run IT yourself?
I do not run IT. I do run financial fraud within IT.
Financial fraud within IT.
So kind of like the SOX,
What is that?
SOX management, right?
Oh.
SOX management, BEC attacks, or anything that has to do with the enterprise and business systems.
Yeah.
Because everything, if you think about like a public company like ours is, the accounting, the financial principles, kind of all these hinge on the business systems that you're operating on.
Right.
Because everything is tech, right?
But then, like, so do you prescribe like everything from internal IT security to somebody who's potentially using the product and a product level security too?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's IT, which is more
because it's a public. I mean,
it's a public. Yeah.
So you can't have any screw ups.
You should not, right? With the SEC rulings that came out, like what does that say, right? Like even if you do, like make sure you disclose that.
Yeah.
And also have a right process and practice on how you manage risk.
Right.
Which essentially talks about not just your internal enterprise IT risk, but also how do you do the same thing for the products you build, right? And for the software that you deliver with your customers, the partnerships you build with your, business partners, publishers, etc. We, as Yext, just the business model of Yext is we operate in 3 different directions. So 1 is customer, 2 is internal, which is IT, and 3 is publishers like Facebook's and Google's, Yelps. So all the publishers that we do have some deep integrations.
That people are going to use with you, or they're going to use your stuff, or you're going to use their stuff.
Exactly. So business partnership, like a good old business partnership is, we make these services available for them to use, and vice versa.
Right.
And so we are kind of in this business pact. So if something happens there, something happens to us. So it's this like the whole supply chain
to each other relatively often then?
Very much, yes.
But then when did you join Yext?
It's been about 2.5-ish years now.
Damn. So like basically when you came in, what did you do? Like what was the first thing you did? Like, you have to take stock of everything. You go in, you go down your checklist and put everything together. Like what happens?
It's kind of like this. So for me, this is my second CISO role. So I've done this kind of rodeo before.
But like when you say second,
like,
you're like, before you were working on the security technology. Like you were figuring them, managing them, putting them together, installing them, worked your way up the ranks?
Yeah, kind of. So when I started off, of course, I came from the ranks of systems security engineer, then went into networks, application security, GRC, security operations for a bit, and then kind of made my way in. For me, I'm still a technologist at heart, so I like,
getting your hands dirty.
Absolutely. And that's the best way to do it, at least in my opinion, right? I think when you know things that you're working on, when you know exactly how the architecture is built, and what goes into building them, you actually have a better sense of building the program, kind of hiring the right people.
Right.
And also having the empathy, right? Because you're at a certain level, like especially when you become a CISO, you're kind of operating at a program level. So now you got to, peel things apart and make it tactical. And at the same time, you got to figure out
what are the actions, right? What is like high level? Don't get me like the insane amount of detail, but like what's if I become a CISO of a company tomorrow, let's call it Yext, what do I do?
So to keep it super simple, like 2 things, right? For me, it's one is the risk and threat management.
Right.
Essentially, what kind of capabilities are we building as a business to prevent ourselves from threats that are out there.
Right.
2 is obligations as a business. For you to do business, there are certain things that are just table stakes. Regulatory bodies, contractual obligations, right? Privacy certifications, security certifications. So for me, it's like...
Did you check and see, do we have those? Like, what do we have?
Like, what do we have? What do we don't have? Like, kind of this gap analysis in a way.
Okay, good.
Or more broadly speaking, SWOT analysis is what I do.
50-point check on seeing what do you guys have in the company?
Kind of. So, it all depends on what's the foundation that's already built on? Like, am I inheriting something or is it brand new? For me, it was brand new. For the most part, like there's been a team. There was no CISO per se before.
Okay,
the security team was basically 2 people.
Oh, damn.
So
so you had to start from scratch, basically.
Absolutely, almost.
Did they have the bare basics in place at all?
So I think just given the company was in like I said, born in cloud.
Yeah.
There were certain things that we just leveraged from the cloud providers themselves, right? So the basic security baselines.
Okay.
So for example, configurations. Let's say AWS, it comes with authentication, permissions management.
But what about single sign-on, for example?
Okta was already there.
Okay.
So
the IT team.
IT team was in place, and I think
they did a lot of the homework already.
They did. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was completely from scratch, as in even for the simple things like incident, the identity and access management you got to build out. No, that's not the case. I would say maybe level 2 is where I had to start. More importantly for me, it's not about the technology, but it's about the risk for the business.
Right.
What is the risk management we have in place right now? What kind of business resiliency do we have? What's the risk profile that fits into that resiliency?
Yeah.
And then ultimately, how do we kind of, build out the maturity around it? One of the first questions I got from the board of directors in my first meeting with
they
them.
hit you up, they're like, yo.
The first thing. Yeah, exactly.
They're
The
like,
first
yo,
thing.
dude, Mr. Congratulations on the new role. What's going on?
Brand new CISO, how's it going, right? And okay, before you say that, I have a question for you.
Yeah. Okay, and what was the question?
So the question is, how do you even think about the maturity of a cybersecurity program? Think, not approach.
Okay.
Think as in like what goes in the CISO's mind about maturity. Like, does it start with, thinking about what's already built out, or do you want to start, on a new piece of paper?
Okay.
For me, it was kind of, a little bit of both, right?
You don't sound like the kind of guy that likes throwing things out of the, like you don't want to just like start from scratch. Like,
oh, absolutely not.
Adopt, change, merge, modify, tune, tweak, rather than, hey, everything that someone else is doing is terrible.
Absolutely, man. So there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
The greats out there already built certain things, like frameworks come to mind, right?
Yeah.
You have a framework, established framework that worked out. It's vetted, tested from the industry experts. Why not use that? Why, you can invest your time in thinking about how you deploy something, not so much the whys and the whats. For me, the whys and the whats are already defined in a way.
You think so? Like what?
So, for example, let's say the risk framework. I'm talking about, being the risk manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, enterprise risk management is one of the biggest topics, right, within a company, which is shared between internal audit, typically, and the CISO office. So, you're thinking about different categories that go into that. What is it? Business resiliency, crisis management, business continuity.
So you have to build out the functions or what?
So the functions are defined, but how do I build those is basically where I
guess,
would
is
like
there
to
like a human that you now have to hire that does that stuff?
Human, tool set, building the process, things like that. Like the whole PPT, right?
Manage tool.
So it's basically a SIM.
Okay,
so you would have a SIM as a crisis management tool. So you're trying to build out a process. So first you have a tool, right?
Yeah.
Discovery, coverage you need, and like what kind of systems have to come into scope. You get the feeds.
Because I guess when I think crisis management, I think, okay, something has gone wrong in the company. But like, how does the SIM help with that?
Well, so before something bad happens, SIM is basically giving you the feeds about, what's going on. What's the story behind that? How do you build a storyline about an attack? Indicators of compromise, indicators of attack, the typical things that you would look at.
Right.
So SIM is essentially systematically enabling you with the data.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does that, you're basically using that for multiple different purposes: investigation, forensics, how to enable escalation with your own team, management team, communication strategy. And ultimately, how do you, within the investigation, of course, this happens, is how do you isolate things, from going even further, the blast radius, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things, like, when I'm going back to the topic, the framework establishes that these are the basic best practices you could use. And this has worked for many companies, by the way, and they do that, because that's how it ended up in the framework.
Yeah.
And why not, why reinvent it?
But like when you join, so step one was like, let me basically take inventory of everything.
Absolutely. Asset management is the first thing.
Which assets do we have? Like, whether that's a device, whether that's maybe some kind of a server, maybe that's something, but some sort of technology, internet connected device.
Absolutely. So let me kind of, put a little more brushstroke on that. I typically look at two different things. So one is the program level functioning of framework, and second is the control level.
Right.
The program level, in a good example would be the NIST CSF, right? So NIST CSF talks about identity all the way through, respond and recover.
Right.
You have a program level understanding about these are the core competencies that you would need in a program, and this is how you going to go and build it, because we're going to give you some level of prescription about how you need to build it. The second one, which also, it's kind of less, the NIST is more, or the program level is more strategy building, and then you have the controls, which is more tactical building or operational building. A good example for that would be like a CIS controls, CIS benchmarks, right? Which you're going to say now, okay, these are the basic implementations or basic controls that I need to build in, so I can, one, mature my program based on the NIST CSF, and two, I'm protecting myself with these capabilities, which are much more technical in nature.
But like, when you're putting those together, I mean, so you say take stock, right? So like, how did you take stock? Like, you just asked them like, hey, tell me about all the devices and laptops we have. Like,
Oh,
what
God.
did you do?
Dude, that's
It's like sometimes that's the thing is that there's like these frameworks and passages and this and that and like, oh my God, it gets so complicated. It's like literally, what did you do?
you just open a can of worms now.
No, but
It's
what
going to
was the
take
first thing?
an entire
simple.
entire podcast to talk about
No,
that.
no,
But okay,
simple.
simple thing. Um,
Simple. You're like there's like 2,000 people that work at Yext, right?
yes.
It's like
Kind of.
Where you like, yo, I assume each one of these humans has like a laptop, so you're like,
Yeah.
what's going on the laptop?
Well, see, I think for us, it's a combination of things: spreadsheets,
Spreadsheet.
asset management tool. In a way, it's not completely.
What asset?
We had something called Omnitsa.
Onitsa.
Omnitsa is basically this. It's not even asset management. It's more of this asset inventory tool.
I'm just curious, or maybe people
Yeah.
would be curious, like, what does it do?
Omnitsa, it's basically, it sends out these sensors, just like you would have security scanners, right? Just like you have a sensor in each of your, in each of our management devices. So, for example, Mac, these are all being deployed by JAMF. So JAMF has a sensor for Omnitsa. It's automatically going to connect the,
So then all the
into
laptops
feeds.
and stuff and sitting in Jamf will come to this one place.
Exactly.
It's like your source of truth, basically.
It's source of truth, exactly.
Got it.
And now you also build the context within that, right? So for example, you have certain, it's not like a DSPM, but it helps basically understand, like if this system has PII, okay, you can tick that off, right? If this system has PCI, you can tick that off. And then you also add some business components into
But that's like automatic. You have to like manually say, hey, the system processes PCI.
You have to do it manually, exactly. Because which is where it's more of an asset inventory, which I was talking about.
Yeah.
You manually do a lot of things, whereas DSPM, for example, from a data standpoint, it automatically does it for you.
Things out. But I
Exactly.
think those things are not so automatic that people think.
Or they're definitely not, yeah.
There's definitely not like just press a button, you're done. But like, okay,
Yeah.
dude, you have to tell me, what's your favorite tool that you use? Because that's what I want to hear. What the favorite tool is.
So for me, I think
Besides dope.security, obviously.
Oh, okay.
Besides dope.
Now we're talking. All right. Besides dope.security, definitely my SIM tool.
Okay, got it.
Now, two reasons. One, we just recently got it. We're super thrilled to have
Which one
that.
is it?
It's called Hunters.
Hunters.
Yeah.
Did we get a shout out?
Yeah,
I'm
Hunters.
using my podcast to pro.
You asked for it, man.
No, I'm just kidding.
You asked for it. No,
Okay, interesting.
they're a good team. They're a good team. And the product they're building is truly revolutionary. I will say that.
Damn.
One of the Gen-3 products, I will say.
Gen-3. Okay,
Yes.
we'll talk about Gen-3. However,
Absolutely.
I gotta ask you, there's the best products you've ever bought, and there's also like the worst products, like any that ripped you off, like that were the worst.
I'll
Is
not
there any like that?
I'll not take any names,
No,
but
no, it's
there is
okay.
one. Yes.
Was there one that ripped you off?
Well, a
You got ripped
couple.
off by a company?
Oh, absolutely.
Damn, how'd you get ripped off?
On multiple levels. In hindsight, I don't think it's just the company's fault. I'll be honest and fair. In hindsight, I think we should have also done better.
Really?
When it comes to just evaluating.
But did you get your money back?
business use cases? We did not, unfortunately.
You didn't get your money? How much did you blow?
It's about
It's like greater than
$250,000.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Dude, that
It's
is
expensive.
kind of
It's a sunk cost, right?
Do you
It's
feel
a sunk
bad?
cost now, and kind of. I mean, everybody would feel bad if you're losing money and not getting
I
value out
gotta
of the
ask
product,
you,
right?
What tool is it?
I don't want to talk about it. Sorry, man. I don't want to talk. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I'm gonna give compliments to tools, and I'm gonna name them, but not so much on the other side.
I have a feeling I know what tool it is.
Okay, keep it to yourself.
It's one of our competitors, isn't it?
Yes. I'll say that much. Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Well,
yes, for sure.
I mean, I think that's like one of the reasons that we connected because
Yeah.
for me, I've always been about service, right? When you come in and especially come from an Indian background, that whole like, guest is God kind of thing.
Right.
Customer is not just should be happy, but should be very appreciated, right?
Mhm.
And kind of worshipped in a way.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's so important because I just don't get it. Like if you're gonna use the product that we built from our own hands, then we want you to love it. If you don't like it, take your money back.
Right.
I'm totally happy with that. Because that sucks.
Yeah, for sure. It sucks, and also you kind of lose a customer for life, right? It's
Yeah.
not just about like I'm with this company now. In the future, I'll be somewhere else,
Right.
right? Like maybe the use case works out, and I'm gonna purchase you. But now after this experience, maybe I'll not do it so much.
Damn. And that's I think for me, coming from building a product cybersecurity company, I really want that to change.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's okay at all. I think it's really screwed up.
It definitely is not okay. Now, I think, one of the reasons we should also change that is because their cybersecurity is still new. Like, even though it's been maybe around for a decade or so,
Right.
a lot of things that are happening within cybersecurity, of course, the acronyms, Gartner comes up with many, and every acronym, of course, you'll have to take some time to understand what that means. And second thing is also
complicated,
which gets super complicated, right, by onto itself. And so when you're going into these discussions or evaluations or POCs, whatever you may call it, you do not know what the end result would be. And sometimes you end up purchasing something that may not, may not work in like a few months from now. Maybe it doesn't work. I think it makes sense for, for the vendors out there, and I've had good relationship with many of the vendors. And of course, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus with this,
you're
but
not
I
throwing
feel
under the bus, you just are, but we won't say you are.
Right. Okay. Well, that's one way to put it. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But like the whole.
But I think
it's important, right?
It's absolutely important.
This is the opportunity to tell people, like, yo, you shouldn't do this. Don't do this.
Yeah, man. So at the end of the day, like the programs and systems and processes, you talk about all those things, but you're interacting with a human. Everything starts and ends with a human.
Yeah.
So I think your way of responding, interacting, building relationships will have to be with humans at the end of the day. If you can do that, I think it's just this goodwill that you're also kind of manifesting in this universe.
Of course, you help.
It'll always come back to you, right?
Always comes back.
Not trying to be philosophical, but that's, I've seen that happen multiple times. I have good experience with you. Yeah. I'm not only going to take it for myself, but I'm going to share that. I share the goodness outside, right? And we, as CISOs especially, and every trade has this, we talk a lot. And we don't go just because we've seen something on your website. We go because somebody else recommended to us about something, right? And that's the first priority. Like we have these, very channels that we're like, hey, we're trying to address this problem. What do you think?
Right.
And one person will come in and, talk about a practice and not so much a solution, right? But now I'll say, okay, can we automate this some way? Can I reduce the cost, by having people manually doing this? Like another person pops in and I was like, hey, dope.security is doing exactly that. You want to go? He didn't give me money, by the way, to tell this. I'm just taking that as an example.
I did not bribe him yet.
Yet. That's the key word, yet.
Soon to be bribed.
I'm kidding.
The Yext CISO. I'm just joking. Tell everyone I'm just joking. I'm not actually going to bribe them yet.
Well, didn't you bribe me with the hoodie already?
I did bribe you with the hoodie, so
no, that's
fair.
That's just fair. You being a good person.
Is it though?
It is.
I think I just wanted to.
Maybe time will tell.
Time will tell.
Okay.
How many bribes? Dude, I think that like for me, when I like started Dope, like the best thing I could have had, I was just telling one of my friends, it's like best thing I had is that you meet new people. And also here in the Bay too, right?
Yeah.
Because like being from the Bay Area, there's a specific culture that people don't realize. Like I was born here, right? That's why we call it Dope. Right. But you don't realize that culture of helping people and putting passion in what you do, it's a very California-ish thing. I mean, many other places around the world too. Like if you think about in India, for example, right? Like you're from Hyderabad, they make the insane Tollywood movies, for example.
Yeah.
Bollywood movies, whatever it is, they put so much into what they do. And that's what we want to do too.
Absolutely.
Put whatever we have into it.
Absolutely. Put the passion.
Exactly.
Passion into everything you do.
Dope is passion.
There you go.
But so like, I was going to ask you, you use these technologies when you started, you were actually installing and configuring these products in your company, right?
That's correct.
So you were hands-on.
We're hands-on when we spoke the first time. That's correct.
Got it. And so like when you were hands-on, when you first started doing this stuff, like that is what I always probably consider the Gen 1 of cyber, right?
Right.
It's like you actually have to install stuff. You have to like go in. You have to have probably set up like a VMware box or something like that. So that is like Gen 1. Then there was a Gen 2 where people would start like hosting things for you.
Right.
But now there's this Gen 3, which is like you do it all yourself without like very much headache.
Right.
What do you think about that? Like where is it going, or where do you see the transition from where we were 10 years ago to where we are now?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. I think it's reducing a huge human cost, a huge operational cost, a huge maintenance cost, right? Think about all the different things that we had to do if you're actually installing something.
Right.
It's not just about installing something. You got to manage that. You got to sustain that.
Yeah, because you don't just like set it and forget it. Right?
Exactly. It's not like
that at all.
Yeah, it's not like that. So Gen 3 is like this new evolution, right? I think, there's, of course, like just like everything else happens, the evolution is going to continue. There's no full stop anywhere. But I think the way that's happening now, it's absolutely amazing. Everything is natively connected.
Right.
It's in the push of a button. You actually get a lot of different feeds. The problem is not so much with the tool or how do you operationalize that, but one problem I do see is the amount of data that you get back. Right, the context switching that happens between the tools.
Oh, because you have so many different tools.
So many different tools and so many different things you have to think about because now you have the data. Because it's like, we're in this kind of this data theme, right? You get all this data, and then you got to process that, synthesize that, figure out like what kind of outcomes do you really
give me a
need.
specific example.
So,
always specific.
Oh, well, since we talked about hunters, I'm going to talk about the data from there, right? Because that is literally a lot of data.
They're pulling the data from, like, for example, they'll pull in the data from Dope, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Okta, like,
everything.
keeping it simple, Okta, Dope, anything, right? They have these native integrations that automatically happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get all the data.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the data?
So like
the response aspect of it,
but you have to configure
it's sometimes taken care of, but sometimes not so much because the problem is it depends on the business again. It goes back to the point where every business is different. You just can't have a silver spoon when it comes to responding to something, right? And there's a lot of process that also happens. It's not just about the tool. Like, people talk about we fixed this problem with the tool. No, not really. You fix the automation problem with the tool. But the problem itself, it's still outstanding. You fix that with a practice and a process.
Right.
And I'll take an example, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say you have a ransomware incident. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
A ransomware. Now, before a ransomware is, or the compromise happen, you would get these feeds from hunters. Like, hey, there's this sporadic events.
Someone has had it happen. Yeah.
Exactly. Sporadic events that are happening across the environment, sometimes cloud, sometimes non-cloud.
Got it.
Now you got to piece that together and you got to figure out, okay, how do I respond? Do I contain that? Do I quarantine that? Do I...
And you don't do this inside of like your EDR console or your
exactly. EDR console, right? So
you don't do that inside there? You do it inside of Hunters?
Well, it depends. That's what I was talking about because you have all this data that's also coming from, it's duplicative, right? It happens in Hunters. You can do the response in Hunters and also in EDR.
Okay, got it.
So this is where I was talking about. It
so
gets
integration. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Like, what's the value you're trying to retrieve? If the value you're trying to retrieve is to keep that ransomware just to the endpoints themselves, EDR makes most sense. You're looking at lateral escalation that's happening beyond the endpoints. Now Hunters comes into picture. Because that's exactly what a SIM is supposed to do, right? SIM, SOAR.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they claim.
That's what they claim, right? I mean, so, anyways, I mean, what I was
tell that it becomes a little complicated. That's what I can tell.
It does. It absolutely does.
And so like once you take stock of everything, then you start putting together technologies. Then you start integrating them together and building like you said earlier, this process.
Yeah.
What is the process we're going to adhere by so that we can actually have the safety? Because I think the scariest thing probably for you is if there's a data breach, for example,
right.
and then you guys get in trouble or you get in trouble.
Yes.
And I think that's like something that people always talk about these days, at least. But what's your favorite like Gen-3 cyber tool now? Like what makes it, or I wouldn't say what's your favorite one. I'd say what makes it, like what makes that exciting for you?
Well, definitely customer service, no doubt.
Customer service,
like it doesn't matter what gen you're in.
That's why it says first class customer. First class experience on
Yes, absolutely. And which is also one thing I like about Dope. I'll not talk about Dope, but I'll also touch upon a few elements like where you guys are really excelling.
Right.
But customer service, no doubt. I'll say customer experience more so, not just service, but experience I think matters. Second is the product effectiveness on the actual problem, not just the, hey, we have a feature here, we have a feature there. The actual platform that you built out, and is it actually solving the problem in the right way based on the use cases and scenarios I have for my business?
It's not like a checkbox feature that just says, like, for example, I see this all the time with DLP, right?
Right.
People, they just assume, like, so semantic force point DLP, very complicated, very, very sophisticated. Not in a bad way, but there's a compliance requirement. But people just assume that, I can do a regex on a 16-digit card number and that's BCI. It's like, dude, that's not exactly how it works.
Right, absolutely not. So, I think this is exactly why the whole waterfall model,
like
kind of flopped, right? Yeah. Like the dev model, because you're trying to put in a lot of things into the same boat, and that boat is going to sink. Be nimble, be agile, like which is why the agile methodologies and DevOps, kind of came into the picture, is because you're incrementally building the maturity. You're incrementally trying to think about what's the next best thing.
Right.
Like if you're trying to tackle in a manageable chunk, then you have better outcome, right? Better outcome means you're actually fixing the issues at hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like, so you went in, you did this stuff. I'm sure the first couple of months was pretty complicated. But what happened on the the next, I guess, like day to day of today? So now that you've been there for a couple of years, like what do you do on a daily basis, like hour to hour? Just curious.
Oh, like as in my role specifically?
Yeah, like I mean, because I think that sometimes there's this like demystification of the system, right?
Yeah.
People don't actually know like what do you do in an 8-hour day on a typical basis.
Oh my God.
I know it's like slightly weird question.
It's not so much a weird question, but it's a lot of oomph put into that question.
Right,
so it's a pretty broad question, right? I would say like, I think in a day of a CISO, you're kind of modeling the risk. You're figuring out, the financial implications for the company. In one meeting, you're jumping in and trying to help out a customer about, a best practice or, about, hey, we have this feature in our product, so we can, kind of help you out in this way. Like showing this competitive advantage.
You talk to the customer?
I do.
So that's basically where you spend like a couple hours of your day doing it.
No, not every day. I would say like maybe a couple hours every week, I would say.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's more like the field CISO, which is, expanding.
So you have to do that. Right? You have to do that for a little bit.
I do that myself, yes. For bigger deals, of course. If it crosses a certain ACV threshold, that's when I kind of jump in.
An ACV threshold. Very buzzwordy of you.
Yes, that's right. Another jargon, huh?
Very jargony of you.
Annual contract value. Sorry about that.
No. But the reason why I don't like buzzwords is because I feel that sometimes people try to make them up and they just like zero trust. Dude, the worst buzzword of all time.
ZTNA.
ZTNA. Like, dude, all right, I want it. Like when somebody says there's no VPN, zero VPN, I'm like, dude, okay, like let's just very clearly tell people what we mean by no VPN.
Right.
Because there's still like it's technically a VPN, right? You're tunneling from one device to potentially a stopover if you're using one of the legacy guys, and then down into an environment. It's just you're actually adding complexity, right?
That's another one I'll add on. So speaking of the day of a CISO, one thing we spend a lot of time on is educating people about the acronyms that Gartner comes up with.
Educating who?
Educating board, educating executive team. Yeah.
So you have to basically define, so do you have to explain to people what security service edge is?
Well, think about this, for example, right? A board member gets a random email from someone. Maybe that person is investing in a company or is a board member.
Right.
He's like, hey, we're doing this awesome ZTNA.
Yeah.
You should have that. You should talk to your CISO about that and have it implemented. It's going to make money, right?
And then they email you?
The pendulum swings.
They email you and they're like,
well, they email me sometimes. They talk to me directly in the meeting itself. Like, this awkward silence from me. I'm like, where's this coming from, first of all? Like,
so they just ask you, are you guys using ZTNA?
Well, kind of, right? Oh, and like, can we propose something to you? And this is.
Gartner, look at what you've done. You have ruined every. Oh, jeez. Well, obviously, the thing is that I've always liked Gartner a lot.
Yeah.
I feel that it's a good way of learning about a space.
I think it's not all bad, right? Like if you're trying to package a lot of different things, acronym is good.
Yeah. I mean, I love acronyms. It's like Secure Web Gateway, very simple.
Absolutely.
You know what it does. URL filtering, blah blah blah. Or like CASB, it's like, hey, there's specific use cases. Versus somebody basically saying, hey, like too big, too buzzwordy. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we have this zero trust exchange platform. Dog, that does not mean anything at all.
Absolutely, man. I think acronyms are here to stay, so I don't think we can do a lot about it.
Right.
But
so you spend a lot of time with the customers.
So customers,
so I was like explaining and kind of conversing with everyone.
Well, kind of showcasing the competitive edge that we have as a platform, right? Like for example, we have other competitors too in the market. So I'm talking about the neat things that we do from a security program standpoint. Security is a competitive advantage in this day and time. So
because you actually interact with a lot of customer data.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you still want to have, and I think you internally integrate with those other customers too.
We do, and the big ones too, right?
Databases, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so then it becomes a little. It can become complicated, right?
It could. When you're talking about sensitive data, the CCPAs and CPRAs.
You access the wrong place. It might be a bit of a problem.
Yes, exactly. And GDPR is, again, another acronym.
Yeah.
It's also a big thing now. Like every time you have a deal that goes through in the European Union, GDPR is a big deal. That's like a mandate.
DPA and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. The whole
DPA. Honestly, like I had to work very closely for hours internally, but it was a good learning process for sure because you have to define, okay, where is the data? What are you doing it? What's the purpose of you using it? All that kind of good stuff.
Absolutely.
So like, we talked about you talking to customers. We talked about you basically like explaining this and evangelizing this internal, or asking people. Basically, people are going to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, what else do you do on a daily basis?
Oh, and then kind of, leading the teams too, right? Like I said, we have the certifications, we got the audits going on, the financial fraud, that's another function. Product security is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So everything that we ship to our customers, we need to have like, the security requirements built in.
And those engineers are your team basically.
My team,
over?
Exactly. We do the penetration testing, the bounty programs.
So you have pen testers on your team.
We do, and we're also kind of enhancing that to attack simulation strategies going forward. So we want to plug in
pretty hefty team here. Huh?
It's a rockstar team.
Rockstar team.
Definitely a shout out to my team. Amazing team. Like I definitely wouldn't have done without that. Like that.
No,
my team
cool
is
to
amazing.
See them, I think when you put together, and is it a big team?
We got about 20 people, 20-ish.
And they're all like people you work with in the past, or?
Not really, not one person.
Really? Oh, really?
Not one person.
They're all fresh.
They're all new people, but we've gotten pretty close over the last 2 years.
Damn.
Almost like family, right?
It is. I mean, it becomes like that. I mean, I got very lucky.
We're attached to hip in a lot of ways.
Of course,
right?
You're working with the person every day.
Exactly.
I got very lucky because I ended up, there's for example, Sunil, who he leads cloud engineering. I work with this guy. He's known me since I was 21 years old.
Wow.
He's known me for a long time.
Wow.
So he reads, like even Aiden, who's doing our product. Like I used to talk to this guy for 2 hours a day during pandemic because we were building this thing. It was these people. Like there's so many people in the company. And I'm blessed because everyone always says, "Oh, isn't like it's super lonely being a founder and this?" Not like it's a little less lonely when you have some friends around.
Right. That's so true. That's so true.
And then we're having fun, right? We're trying to make something different. We're all like so excited about that. I guess you have that too now, right? Because you have all these people around you that you enjoy working with.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's the people at the end of the day. Like if you have the right people and good people around you, good times. Like in GRC, like one of the functions that also falls into my spectrum is a GRC, and GRC can be draining as hell.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the audits, it's about requirement analysis, it's about going deeper and deeper into the business context, not so much the technical stuff. Business context is dry, right? I'm sorry for the business folks out there, but it's pretty dry.
Right.
And when it's draining, you gotta have good people out there and who can make it interesting, and which is why my team is everything. So we do it together. And like I said, cybersecurity is new for everyone. Like even for people within,
it's a new space, right?
It's a new space. So do the best that you can to help out people.
Yeah.
Always. And this includes cybersecurity engineers too. Just because how fast it's growing. Sometimes we don't know a lot of things ourselves, right? I don't mind saying that because I truly don't.
Yeah.
There's always new things that come up and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before. Now let me learn. But in order for me to learn, I need some person on the other end to help me out. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta even like every time you want to learn something new, the more you can help someone.
Yes.
Eventually, like you said earlier, it's like goes around, comes around. But like what?
Absolutely.
What is your? I always ask this, but dude, what is your favorite thing about Dope?
About Dope? Oh, first favorite thing is Kunal.
No. I'm crying.
I'm not joking. This guy made quite an impression the first time I met with him. Man. The humility, the down to earth personality that you have, dude, it's very addictive. It really is.
Thanks.
I think you are more a friend than a person trying to sell, but a vendor essentially, right?
Right.
I think you take, which is what I was talking about. Like you got to really understand the customer first, and I think you understand that inside out. I think you truly helped me out on quite a few things. Like you really
something cool,
Yeah, and I'm not joking. Like I think I want to give the credit where it's due, and this is definitely that place. That's one. The second one, dude. After I spoke to you, I think not after I spoke to you. Before I spoke to you, I visited your website.
Yeah.
It's dope as hell. And I was quite amazed with how simply you put the concepts in there.
Right.
I think that was something I liked in the big vendors out there.
Yeah.
It's you talk about a product portfolio, 20 different products. Okay, fine, but that doesn't help me. Keep it super simple, digestible, consumable, clear and concise. That's it.
Somebody can really, truly understand it.
And if you see, like in your website, the homepage, like if you scroll down, I think midway through the homepage, you see there are 4 different things. I can't recall, of course, everything.
URL filtering.
URL filtering, exactly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
well, that is perfectly simple, right?
Yeah.
I don't, without going too much into the details, I know these are the things that you do.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to evaluate, and that's where I'm going to go deep into it. I don't
Right.
need a data sheet right off the bat.
I just can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's something. Yeah, that's something I know. And
That's so
also,
true, yeah.
that's something like I don't need for, you know, myself. I'm not super concerned about how this is actually going to be implemented. That's where I would, you know, have my
Yeah.
team do it. I need the high level business understanding about what this is. Is this fixing my problem, addressing my problem? What does it do, right? It's funny. I'm sure, you know, practitioners out there can relate to this. It's like when you jump onto these vendor calls,
Yeah, they take like 30
the
minutes to really
entire,
tell you.
yeah,
what they
and
do.
1 hour, like entire 1 hour, 55 minutes goes through the deck. And then last 5 minutes, I'm going to ask a question. Okay, what is it that you
Exactly.
do?
Dude, that's what I think is actually Gen 3. And I think that if you are able and to make someone try your product without you even having to be on the phone call,
Right.
that
Oh, absolutely.
that is
That's
beautiful.
Well put.
It does not require an engineer to be on the call with you and set up a POC call or any of that stuff.
Right.
We've had customers just go in and get started.
Yeah.
That I think is the future, right?
Like
Because-
self-service, right?
Yeah, because I mean, it's fine. You want to talk to me, you want to talk to whoever, just
Yeah.
call me, no problem. I'll have the conversation with you. But what we don't have to do is we don't have to spend the time trying to give you this high level, terrible presentation
Yep.
about, oh, this is our vision. It's okay. Like
Yeah.
this is what we do. It's on the website.
Right.
Very simple.
Absolutely.
And that's you know, I think that's you know, you have inspired me a lot. Yeah.
Oh,
Not just this.
okay.
I love that I've met people like you that are here supporting me, whatever we do, and as a team and a company, you actually like it.
Oh,
It
thank
makes
you,
me
man.
more excited
Yeah.
to do and get in on Monday and work even harder and harder. But dude, I cannot thank you enough for coming into the Back to the Future lit up party car here.
Yes.
And you know, like I'm just so excited, like for us to like continue the thing, and hopefully one day you'll be sitting with me and we'll get having a coffee, sipping coffee while we're at the RSA, just kind of enjoying dope security everywhere.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely, dude. Looking forward
You'll
to
be
it.
wearing one of these jackets, and I'm like, hey, how do you have an original?
Exactly. I need to get this. I really
Make
need to
it
get
happen.
this. This is really nice. Yeah.
We're gonna make it happen, dude. Thank you again so much, dude.
Yeah, of course,
Really
buddy.
appreciate it, and we'll catch you all next time.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
guys.